Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Let's Talk Computing. My name is Ilaria Parodi of the International Schools team at Pearson, and I would like to give you a warm welcome and also thank you for joining us today. We hope you will find the webinar useful, informative, and inspiring. Shortly, we will introduce you to today's speakers, but before I do that, I would like to draw your attention to our housekeeping rules on the slides on the screen. Please take a few moments to familiarize yourself with those rules. Paying particular attention to the chat box and the Q&A box. Please use the chat box to communicate with us. If you're experiencing any technical issues, please talk to us via the chat box and we'll aim to resolve them for you. The Q&A box is for questions. So the questions you would like to pose our speakers about today's topics. There'll be time to pose your questions at the end of the webinar and we'll aim to go through as many as possible then. The webinar will last for about 1 hour. It is going to be recorded. The recording will be available afterwards, and we'll make sure we share them with you. And now, without further ado, I'm going to hand the time over to Kevin here, senior publisher with the International Schools Curriculum team at Pearson, who will introduce you to today's speakers. Kevin, over to you.
Thanks, Ilaria, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're really pleased you could dial into this webinar about computing. And I'm really pleased to welcome 2 expert speakers here as well who are going to take you through all of the content today. So with the changes we've seen to the computing curriculum over the years, it's no wonder lots of teachers are telling us they're finding it challenging. But it's not just about the curriculum. In the time since I left school, there's a lot of jobs that are now out there in the world that didn't exist those 25 years ago. Many aspects of actual jobs have changed as well, mine and yours included. And UNESCO estimate that lots of new jobs are going to appear in the next few years. And whatever we think about it, technology is changing the way we look at and engage with the world. Computing isn't going to go away. And we see computing not just as activities involving the use of a computer, but a way of thinking and approaching problems in our everyday lives. We're going to be joined today by 2 computing experts, as I said, Paul Clowrey and Sabiha Munshi, both previous teachers and co-authors of our new Inspire Computing course, and they're going to talk us through what's expected in our computing curriculum, but also offer practical strategies for implementing successful computing lessons in your school, and how you can help your students achieve their potential and engage fully with technology that's evolving all the time and isn't going to go away. Paul is a freelance educational author and a graphic designer, and prior to his move into publishing, he taught ICT and computer science for more than 15 years. As a teacher and a school leader, he specialised in virtual learning environments, original schemes of work, and supporting students and teachers expand their use of computer technology in education. Sabiha is a subject matter expert and an education training consultant and a primary teacher with over 10 years experience working in educational environments, providing innovative and engaging lessons. She's passionate about the teaching environment and strives to deliver continuous knowledge enhancement for students and teachers. As I say, we're delighted to have them both here today and delighted that they're co-authors of our new Inspire Computing course. With that, I know I'm looking forward to hearing from them, so I'll hand over to our first speaker of the day, Paul. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Next slide, please. Next start. Thank you very much. So first of all, I'm going to have a talk about the state of computing in 2022 and how we arrived here. Okay, looking at the history behind it and how we got to the position where we are at the moment with the new curriculums. Next slide, please. Thank you. So back in 2010, I had been teaching ICT for around 6 years. I was teaching a range of courses, including level 2 key skills, GCSE ICT, and business communication skills. These and most other courses around this time were based around practical ICT skills. thinking about spreadsheets, databases, professional business documents, and some web design. The only real element of computer science was based around writing simple control programs, the things like traffic lights and automated greenhouses, if anyone remembers those. I think one of the pieces of software popular at the time was Flowell. That was a popular control program, and it did allow for creating simple programs that could react to variables and user input. These were primarily skills for the workplace and presenting information in a professional way. And like many ICT teachers at the time, I really enjoyed delivering these courses, and students enjoyed solid grade outcomes. My focus then was preparing students for either using ICT in further education or the workplace. But I say around this time, 2010, 2012, comments were starting to come from the UK government and picked up in the media about many of the courses at the time had become little more than office training courses, and they didn't really explore the technical side of computing and computer programming. So it was clear then, for those of us teaching at that time, there were some major changes coming. Now, this had been true for some courses, not all, and many wondered how the curriculum would be developed and how those old computing classes from the 80s and 90s might be coming back, those old programming courses. So following an investigation into how computing was being delivered in the classroom and the level of qualifications being taught, the ICT curriculum at that time was scrapped. This led to the UK Curriculum Computing Programme of Study as it stands today, with the majority of Key Stage 4 courses focusing on computer science, with a few still information technology and digital skills courses there as well. Now, I wasn't against this change. It was clear at the time that industry was really crying out for young computer scientists. But in addition to that, everyone else still needed to be competent at using ICT and taking those skills into whichever role they did. So it has taken a few years, but the new computing courses are starting to tackle the need to explore to teach all aspects of computer technology, from the components inside a computer to the software they run, and to even writing your own software now. And courses like Inspire Computing are built around this concept. So here we are in 2022, new courses are being launched, and teachers are really starting to embrace the opportunities they offer. Next slide, please. So I'm going to look at the current computing curriculum as a build-up to the new courses, concepts behind it, and that journey from Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 4. Next slide, please. So here we have the 4 key stages of the computing programs of study. A little bit of background of each one, you can see how the progression goes through. So at Key Stage 1, the focus is on understanding the nature of a simple algorithm. There's a series of repeatable step-by-step instructions. Being exposed to algorithms at this young age, learners can start to look for patterns. Now, this is obviously not going to start with computer programming, but start with something as simple as getting up in the morning, making breakfast, or even turning on and playing that games console. It's the process of looking at step-by-step instructions. This can then lead into starting to understand how formalized programming language commands can be understood by a computer. And finally, young learners are introduced to being a digital citizen in the 21st century and the technology all around us. This includes the introduction to all the benefits it offers, and also some of the common pitfalls that come with it, as we're all aware of. At Key Stage 2, Key Stage 1 ideas are expanded to look at different types of algorithms. the common errors that people make when writing them, and how commands can be combined to create simple programs. As well as experimenting with new software packages, students should be involved with looking at the hardware and hardware and the concepts behind the vast infrastructure of what we know now is the internet, including some advice on how to navigate it correctly. This means internet safety at Key Stage 2 becomes even more important. The students will really start prompted to think about their own online conduct and being able to recognize both good and unacceptable online behavior. So now we arrive at Key Stage 3. This is a time when most students will have a timetabled computing lessons with a subject specialist. Moving away from visual coding blocks such as Scratch, which have been fantastic in Key Stages 1 and 2, students should be experimenting with real programming languages such as Python, JavaScript, and HTML. High-level concepts such as binary, common data types, and Boolean logic are all introduced with key internal computer components such as CPUs, and storage devices start to be introduced and how their role they play within a computer. Our ever-increasing use of technology at home, work, and school is discussed, from the wireless networks we're all now setting up at home on a regular basis, to the linking of networks around the world to form the internet. Now rebranded as digital artifacts, creative and professional documents are still part of the curriculum, including image editing, digital publishing. These are designed with a specific audience in mind. At this age, young people are now, if they haven't already, starting to experiment with online gaming, social networking, and are generally wanting to have a good look around the corners of the internet to see what they can find. So at this age, now more than ever, clear guidance on personal online safety is paramount. And the dangers are expanded to include things like cyberbullying, cybercrime, and identity theft. So students are able to recognize things when they see them. At Key Stage 4, students can put everything into practice from Key Stages 1 to 3 and complete their chosen course. At this point, the vast majority of UK GCSE courses are based around computer science, and those with a creative digital or information skills focus are delivered as vocational courses. Next slide, please. Now, I certainly can't guarantee to answer this one, but what I want to do is have a look at some of the exciting opportunities it offers and put a few opinions forward on that one. Next slide, please. The national curriculum for computing might be almost 10 years old, but the subject matter behind it is constantly updating, and we've all got to keep up. Yes, the internet existed 10 years ago, but our relationship with it has completely changed in the last 10 years. Being always connected is no longer just an idea or a concept. It is what we all do. Many people don't even realize how their devices are connected. In fact, we are more likely to be surprised when buying a household device that doesn't have some sort of connectivity built in. Although I must admit, I haven't yet felt the need to connect our tumble dryer to the internet, but apparently I can. There's a wireless connection on it. I haven't found a use for it yet. Just think about the term working from home. This phrase has changed the workplace forever. And as young people we teach today, they'll be interviewing for their first full-time jobs in a few years' time. And they might be asking, what is the office to home hybrid ratio? That might be a question they'll be talking about. And if someone has said to us all 5 years ago that in the very near future, We will be able to sit and teach a class in our spare bedroom with a chair against the door, laptop and a pile of books and a USB beauty light. Well, you know what the response. We've all done it now. It's all been done. And the introduction of industry standard programming languages like Python into the classroom is giving students that opportunity to make informed career choices that are based on experimentation and trying things out rather than simulation. Supporting these sort of innovations are skills not taught in other lessons, and understanding how to apply them correctly is one of the most exciting aspects, I think, of teaching computing. I have known school leaders in the past query whether teaching computing should even be part of the curriculum anymore. Our students should be using these skills and technology in all their subjects and don't need to be taught it. But to me, this is why it needs to be taught to a higher standard, so it can be utilized and embraced across the curriculum and not just used to simply replace an existing piece of work in an electronic way. Next slide, please. So one of the things I've loved about teaching and still do is designing schemes of work for the students that I've taught, thinking about their interests, their ambitions, and looking for the gaps employers are always looking for. These thoughts are based on some of my experiences at that time. So next slide, please. So yes, I believe lower secondary and primary school is where it's at. By allowing learners to experience both computer science and information technology, they can make an informed choice at key stage 4 as to which direction they might take. The world needs both computer science and information technology. Yes, we need programmers. We also need experts in the use of technology in the workplace, the home, in leisure, in everything we do. And I do worry sometimes these skills have been lost in recent years, especially in things like professional digital design, spreadsheets, and databases. But now courses are starting to appear to resolve that. Off-the-shelf schemes of work, especially the good ones, are a brilliant place to start. You always adapt them to your own needs of your own learners, your students, and your curriculum. Remember, this is a live subject. The teaching structure and assessments can be fixed from one year to the next, but the technology behind it, the news articles you can talk about, the latest trends that are happening in the world are forever changing, and computing lessons need to keep up. One of the most important things I believe in is adding context to every lesson. Removing that horrible, why are we doing this statement we've all had in the classroom from one time to another. Simply replying to it with, well, you need to learn how to filter a spreadsheet isn't really the answer that student wants to hear, but linking it to a real world experience that they've had will always help. For example, years ago, I would be talking to a group of young boys more interested in mountain biking than spreadsheets. So that project on spreadsheets quickly became a project on running their own bike business, how to manage money, and how to create digital advertising. Terms like spreadsheet skills and digital assets were never mentioned. It's about putting the purpose behind it. So what do I mean by innovation opportunities? These are a few of the ideas I recently wrote about online. First of all, get involved with the people in your school that deal with computers. The network managers, the school media designers, the office administration. They'll be doing the things that you've been talking about. They'll be doing the things that you're teaching about. And even might be happy to come and talk to your students about it. Ask those network managers for the broken computers they have in the back of their cupboard. Many students will never see inside of a computer, and many a good lesson has been started with simply handing around parts of a computer where students start trying to identify them and connect them together. Explore the vast wealth of free online resources and how to get to know them. From things like Khan Academy to code.org, these are fantastic for breaking up theory lessons and targeting home learning. Over the years, I've built up pages of links that I know I could use as and when required to pass on for homework study, and keeping those updated. So looking for the latest news articles and the latest events, those trends, have information online to support those. Try and remove the mystery behind social networking and online gaming. Understanding the technology, marketing, and how that money changes hands will empower learners to avoid the mistakes of previous generations. Those of us that didn't have this level of computing support when we were young. Experiment with low-cost computers, from the BBC Microbit to Raspberry Pis. These can be handled, dropped, thrown around, reset as many times as you need, and they'll still work, and they don't break the budget. I once thought teaching learners how to display their name in a simple LED light on a microbit with a little smiley face wouldn't interest the smartphone generation, but they loved it. They thought it was the coolest thing ever, and then quickly forgot in making a smiley face and their name appear, they would learn 3 or 4 basic Python commands in the process. Programming lessons in primary and lower secondary, I believe, is a chance to engage learners with what can be done. Maybe more sometimes than how it can be done. Giving a student 10 lines of code and advice how to adapt it for themselves can be more beneficial than spending hours talking about linking command structures and syntax. Leave that until after you've grabbed their attention. Then explain to them how it works. Next slide, please. Can we have the next slide? Wait 1 second, change myself. Could we have the next slide, please? No problem, I'll carry on. So finally, I'd like to take a quick look at how the computing curriculum can really support school objectives, helping learners to become young adults. If we could have that next slide, that'd be great. If not, I'll continue. So I'm looking now at how computing curriculum can complement school objectives. So preparing young people for the world ahead with knowledge, skills, and independence is what skills are about. Yes, computing skills and technical knowledge will help a young person with aspirations of a career in computing, but they can also help with so much more. I've listed a few here, and I'll read these out. I'm not sure if these are on your screen. If they're not, things like self-confidence, social skills, skills for further education, skills for employment, research, revision and project management, problem solving and independent thinking, and acceptable behavior. But being a confident digital citizen has to be near the top. Students need to know how to seek out genuinely useful online content, promote a positive attitude online, and get to know how to respond to online harassment. It isn't fair that the digital divide means that many people miss out when they're looking for jobs, shopping for groceries, or even keeping in touch with family and friends. These skills need to start in school so that young people never miss out and are able to pass these skills on to friends and family, those friends and family that might not have had computing lessons. And this can help remove some of the apprehension people have about computer technology. So I'd like to thank you all for listening so far. I've enjoyed this opportunity to talk to you. I'm now going to pass you over to Sabiha.
Thank you very much, Paul. Hi, everybody. I'm Sabiha Munshi, and I'm going to take you through the next few slides on a number of different areas. Thank you very much. Can we have the next slide, please? Clowrey, can I have the next slide, please? Okay, key computing terminology. So let's have a look.
Sorry, Sabiha, my computer is just not responding. So that's why I cannot operate the slides very well.
Okay, no, that's fine. Would you like to present and let's see if that works? We just give it a minute or so and see if it.
Let me just pass this to Harsha. I think it's better if she drives the slides because I just don't seem to be able to do anything from my computer.
Okay.
Apologies about that.
Not a problem. Thank you. Okay, so let's have a look at key computing terminology. What is the key terminology in computing and how can we explain these terms to students? Can I have the next slide, please? Right, okay, so let's have a look at what an algorithm is. Simply put, an algorithm is a set of step-by-step instructions to carry out a function. This can be as verbal, pictorial, or simple everyday steps. Students are encouraged to create this as unplugged or non-device activities, as it's known, to help them write programs on Scratch or other. And when we talk about verbal, we just talk about just saying the steps out loud. So move forward 4 steps, turn right, turn left, 90-degree turns also, a quarter turn. Pictorial could be arrows or some sort of key, or it could be in terms of thinking about brushing your teeth, the steps for brushing your teeth. It could be a simple set of pictorial images that the children then debug or sequence. Okay, and in its simplest step, especially from the foundation stage all the way up to year 6, I would say algorithms carried out as verbal, pictorial or written instructions could be fantastic. Just be careful and just be clear from the outset that they need to be precise set of instructions. Okay, let's have a look at programming language. So computer programming language uses specific terms and syntax that humans use to write computer instructions. This has to be precise, and a good way of thinking about this is, will the computer understand what I'm inputting? In the 4 to 11 age bracket, it's mainly block programming such as Scratch, but then however, once you move on to the 11 to 14 age group, you may use Python, Java and other. Then we go on to variable. So what does a variable mean? So a variable is something that can be changed, and in computer programming we use variables to store that information that can be used later on in our program. For example, when designing a game, we may have can I just have a look at the last bit, please? We may have a game that we use to add a point score each time the player scores. Next slide, please. And that might be our variable. Okay, we then look at debugging, okay, or debug. That's the process of looking for and removing errors from a computer program. An example may be where an extra step has been added that the student needs to take away because it doesn't execute as it needs to. Or a recommendation for all students is that they role play the program or work with another student who can then help them spot that error. So it could be that there's an extra step, there's a step missing. It could be a number of ways, okay, of doing this. Take away that fear of failure in students though, by ensuring that they understand that in real life programmers are constantly debugging, and that sometimes even they need others to help them spot the errors, to help them debug. So programmers are constantly reworking their initial program to be able to then debug and have a working end product. Okay, so that's making that clear in your classrooms, keeping it as a live classroom where it's not a fear of failure at all. It's all about that work in progress. Then we come to iteration, and this is sometimes called repetition, and is the process of repeating a task over and over again. So if we have a look at this example here, this is an example on how to draw a square, or drawing a square on Scratch. If you have a look, the steps are written down. There's a repeat loop there, which is your repetition. The repeat loop repeats those steps in between that. So the blocks of move 100 steps and turn 90 degrees to create that square, and it's repeated 4 times. So we've also got count controlled iteration. That is when a loop is carried out for a set number of times. We've got condition controlled iteration. So again, another repeat is when the loop could be carried out indefinitely, as we do not know how many times that step will be repeated. Let's have a look at the next slide. Okay, then we look at selection. Selection adds the ability to grow more complex interaction from the user within the program, okay, or with the program. It allows for the user to enter or input something, and the program will then be able to decide how to respond, which is the output, depending on the input given. Selection also allows programs to become more complex in design, and taking it a step further, we can have nested selection as well, which is where there is selection within selection. So if we have a look at the if else statement or the elif statement, we've got if it is sunny, then output would be to wear a sun hat, else output could be to put on your sunglasses. So we've got that selection there. There's 2 options there, and it depends on the what you put down as your input. Okay, then we have a look at binary. In Key Stage 2, I would introduce binary in its simplest terms. It's more for Key Stage 3 and beyond. Okay, but binary is where a computer is that understanding that a computer only understands machine code, and that is known as binary. A computer is built up of switches. They can be on, which is represented by a 1, or off, which is represented by a 0. Okay, every time you do something on a computer or anything on a computer, it's converted into machine code for the computer to execute. It's always useful to tell the children in Key Stage 2 that I wouldn't even touch on it in Key Stage 1 unless it arises. It's useful to explain to students that any command that is entered into a computer has to be converted into binary for the computer to be able to understand it. However, it is carried out so quickly that we as the user do not notice it. Next slide, please. Okay, let's have a look at computational thinking now. What is computational thinking? What are the core constructs in computational thinking? And how can we develop that computational thinking with students? Next slide, please. Right, so computational thinking, the curriculum places computational thinking and creativity at the heart of computing. But what exactly is it? If we have a look at the programme of study for the national curriculum, you will see that computational thinking is there in its simplest sense, and it's mentioned all the way through Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and it will be in Key Stage 3 and 4 as well. So what is it? Is it thinking like a computer? Not necessarily. Okay, a computer does not have a brain or thought processes, so we cannot think like a computer in its simplest sense. It is an inanimate object that only executes the functions or the output that we as humans put into it. Unless that computer has that program or code written, there's no way that it can execute something. Okay, so we do not think like a computer. So then, is it thinking about problems in a way that allows a computer to solve them? So computational thinking is something that people do, not computers. It includes that logical thinking process that we as humans do, the ability to recognize patterns, think in algorithms or that step-by-step process, decomposing a problem, or then abstracting a problem as well. Simply put, computational thinkers are like your problem solvers. Let's have a look at the next slide. Okay, so this brings me on to the key areas of computational thinking. Let's have a look at algorithmic design. So algorithms are one of the most important pillars of this skill. So algorithmic thinking helps in developing a solution to a problem. In general, algorithmic thinking involves solving a problem by devising some precise steps that are required to solve it. For example, giving you an example of how it would work in schools, students are taught the process to perform division or multiplication. What they learn are the algorithms behind it. If a student knows the algorithms to perform multiplication, they will be able to do multiplication for any given number, find those patterns as well. Algorithms allow those systems to automate themselves without creating new patterns. This leads on to decomposition. And what does decomposition mean? So that's computational thinking starts with decomposition after the algorithmic thinking. It is the process of breaking down complex statements from an algorithm into smaller parts. By doing this, it becomes easy and manageable for the students or others to achieve the desired solution. It's important to know that the decomposition technique and to know it because it lets you understand the smaller aspects of a bigger picture. An example of this is where programming a game on Scratch. The creator has to come up with the character, the plot, the actions, and the code itself to make that program work. And that's where all that decomposition aspect will be. So do the children understand exactly what sprite they're going to use, what background they're going to use, what the character is going to be doing, you know, and what have you. Let's look at logical reasoning. Remember, computers don't have logical reasoning, we as humans do. Okay, using our logical reasoning to predict the behavior of simple programs and problems. We have that added advantage as humans to be able to do this, whereas computers cannot predict, only execute what it's been programmed to do by humans. This then leads on to pattern recognition. Can we spot any similar or familiar patterns? Can we see steps that are repeated 2 or 3 times on a program or an algorithm? Can we use a repeat loop at that point? You know, it's looking at them sort of things. Are the angle sizes the same for all sides of a square on a Scratch program? Can we see that? Can we see the number of steps? This skill allows you to refine your algorithm design and make it that little bit more efficient. It then leads on to abstraction. I explained this as seeing an algorithm that needs all the necessary information taken away so that we can get to the main key steps to perform or execute an algorithm or program. Giving an example here, we may be planning a route from home to the park. So this is where we're looking at abstraction. So we may be planning a route from home to the park. We may stop to get some drinks from the fridge, meet a neighbour to stop and chat, and get in the car to drive there. But what's the key information that we need? So we need that route from home to park. How did we get there? We ignore all the other extra information that we have. The only difference here is that if you were to, so getting that drink from the fridge or whatever it was, that isn't part of your abstraction, and you don't necessarily need it. But if you did a detour to the shop, for example, to the local store to buy something, or you picked up a friend from a house 2 streets away or 2 roads away, you need to add that onto the route itself. Okay, so it's getting that key information that you need from there. So that's where that abstraction comes into play. Let's have a look at the next slide. Okay, so how do we develop that computational thinking skills in students, and why is this so important? So research by Richard Sheldrake in 2018 showed that exposure to and building a confidence in computational and critical thinking skills can often be a predictor in students following careers in STEM fields. Just to give you an idea, by the age of 10, children have an idea of where they want to go career-wise, or where they are focusing their studies further with. So just having that in play at the back of your mind, just enriching them with experiences prior to that to allow them to have those aspirations for STEM roles if needs be. There's nothing wrong with the other roles, but it's just making sure that you give them exposure to it. Okay, so some ideas of how to make computational thinking fun are, when you're thinking about abstraction, making treasure maps or maze grids in small groups and asking the students to mark where the treasure is with an X. Swap the map with another group and ask them to plan the quickest, fastest or danger-free route to the treasure. Okay, so you could put blocks in place for children to work off. Algorithm design. Okay, creating recipes is always so much fun in school, you know, creating a pizza, making a pizza, a milkshake or something along those lines. Students will not even realize that they are using algorithms in the sequence of step-by-step instructions, and then add that trick up your sleeve by missing something out so that the students then need to debug, or you may add an extra step. Okay, that the children are like, what do we do here? You know, so for example, making a banana smoothie, but with the milk missing from the algorithm, can they execute those steps? And it could be that you role play as a teacher right at the front. Teacher is making a sandwich, but with the algorithm stating that you need to spread the butter. But have they been given that butter knife to be able to spread it, or have they said pick up the butter knife? You know, that's where that logical thinking will develop with your students too. This then leads on to decomposition. So break break up a complex problem into smaller parts before solving each part individually. A fun way of understanding decomposition is breaking down that dance sequence like YMCA, or creating a game, or when creating a character based on an algorithm with multiple steps. So there's lots of different ways of doing that as well. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, when we're looking at pattern recognition, so we're going to use that example that we had earlier. Students could use this when using Scratch to draw shapes, but there's lots of different ways you can use pattern recognition. It could be something along the lines of, you can see squares, triangles, and hexagons on a page. Okay, it's how many hexagons are there, what can we spot, what colors are there, you know, are there colors that repeat themselves over time, you know, things like that. So you're looking at what patterns you can spot on a page. But students could use this when using Scratch to draw shapes. Can students work out which shape is drawn from each of these? So if we have a look, the program or the code is exactly the same for each of them. The only thing that is changing is the number of repeat steps and the turns that the turns that are being taken. So in this first example, you've got a repeat step of 4 with 4 turns of 90 degrees. Okay, and moving 100 steps, that would create that square. Okay, again, 6 steps, and you've got that turn of 60 degrees. What we have to think about, and the simplest way of explaining this to children, is you've got a 360 degree circle. Okay, if we have a 6-sided shape, we divide that 360 divide by 6, okay, to get our hexagon. If we wanted to draw a triangle, then we divide that 360 by 3, okay, and that's in its simplest sense. So then your challenge could be, can students write the program for an octagon, a decagon, or a heptagon? Can they explain using their logical reasoning as to how and why they know? A simple way to do this would be to right-click on the actual code and add comments directly on there. So children should be able to reason that way. That's all part of your evidence and assessment as well. Can the children understand exactly what they're doing? Can they understand that that pattern, the code itself is exactly the same, or the program that you've written is exactly the same? It's just the number of repeat loops and the turns that that needs to be taken. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so when we think about successful computing lessons, what can successful computing lessons involve? And there's a number of areas that I want to look into a little bit further. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the main things is a curriculum that includes all 3 areas of computing. So looking at the digital literacy side, the computer science, and the information technology. How can we utilize it around in our everyday settings in different subjects? Can they transfer those skills across? And it's quite powerful to ensure that that happens. Okay, another one is the cross-curricular and thematic learning links. Really powerful in itself. Bring those links together. Allow that cross-curricular approach, because it does really help your learners. If they've got an understanding of a topic in one area, then building onto that computer science is really quite powerful. So when planning thematic or cross-curricular links, build that narrative of how that computer journey will take place. So for example, during thematic-based learning, students may have watched or read a story on what photosynthesis is. Okay, so they might have followed the steps in a textbook, you know, a student book. This could be turned into an animation. That's your computing side of it, by using software to add layers of music and voiceovers, so children are explaining the process. Computing and music is then developed further there, okay, and improved by creating backdrops and other key elements as well. So you've got the design and technology going on there as well. You could also look at copyright issues and taking content directly from a web page in terms of creating content for an information booklet, and that's where your digital citizenship or literacy skills will come into play as well. Or it could be an ancient Romans topic with gladiator fight role play that is brought to life with robotics and programming using microbits and crumbles, or even spheros or something along those lines. Elements of reading and writing algorithms and other areas of the curriculum could be incorporated into too. All in all, just think of where those links can be made. However, do not make links for the sake of it, okay? Don't try and push something to work where it doesn't necessarily need to work. The next one we're going to look at is a mixture of both screen and unplugged activity. Powerful, act it out, okay? So that's where the role play comes into play as well. But that unplugged side of it really helps bring it to life for the children. Screen is brilliant, but do that unplug side of it first as well, all the way up to, you know, I'd say definitely Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, but it could transfer again into Key Stage 3 as well. Every learner, every student is different, so you've got to see what the cohort that you're working with. And there's a real need of ensuring that students understand what they are producing in computer science. The value of unplugged computing is vast. When problem solving, using robotics, exploring scenario cards in digital safety, or through collaborative discussion, provide lots of opportunities for students to see that computing doesn't necessarily always have to be screen-based. It follows on with the need for role-playing computing, which is there at the bottom. Students will visualize their programs better if they write them as simple algorithms, act out the steps. Can be lots of fun acting out the steps. You could be doing them in PE also as well. Okay, and following on with the transfer of this onto Scratch or other. It is also highly important in keeping safe in an online world. So all those digital citizenship skills that they need, and that discussion that needs to take place there. If students don't have the chance to explore these scenarios, especially in digital safety, they may not realise if a similar situation crops up in real life. Adding that complexity with adequate challenge opportunities and addressing misconceptions. It goes without saying that addressing misconceptions is something that we should be doing across all subjects, and in computing, it's no different. Okay, tackle misconceptions by both addressing them as they arise, providing those scenarios to encourage questioning and discussion. So put something on the screen, get children to discuss that and say why it's, you know, where that challenge is also as well. And by creating problem-based learning opportunities to debug, tinker, abstract and trace with peers, whole class or at individual level as well. Give it as a learning task at home. You know, it could be a number of different ways that you do that. Finally, adequate challenge. Okay, ask students to debug something, provide them with a problem to solve, give them a set of specific Scratch blocks on a page, and ask them to rearrange them to execute an output. For example, something like this might be a task, might be complete the code so that the sprite will say the 5 times tables and you need to make it loop 10 times, but you've provided all the blocks on the page. They've just got to put them in the right order, or they've got to sequence it. Can they understand it in pairs? Can they understand it individually? Or another one might be provide some code with some of it missing. Okay, can student complete that the missing blocks there? And the key indicator in this, these are known as Parsons problems, but they are really powerful in terms of that computational thinking coming into play there. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabiha. Thank you, Paul. I think we have a couple of questions in chat, more than a couple. So the first question is from Taboho, and it says, is it okay to teach my kids Java if I prefer it over Python?
I'll take that one. So Sabiha and Paul might have their own opinions here as well. Yes, it's fine. So the programming language that we've chosen at our primary curriculum level is Scratch, and at secondary we're looking at Python, because Python is generally, although it's not as quick, it's generally easier to learn, and it's the preferred language for a lot of AI developers as well now. So there's more applications, but Java is faster, and you can use Java or Python when you get to international GCSE. But as Python is the chosen language in Key Stage 3 for us, that's the focus of the examination. But yes, it's fine to teach Java.
Thank you, Kevin. And we have another question. Please may I ask you a question. We're teaching computing to year 1 to year 6 students. Which programming language should we teach in Key Stage 3, especially year 7?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I think probably following on what Kevin just said there, Python is probably the most obvious choice at year 7 onwards. There's lots of opportunity for block-based programming such as Scratch and Scratch Junior, years 1 to 6. I think there's Blocky as well, which is another block-based program. But yeah, moving to year 7, I'd say probably Python is probably the best choice. And I'm not going to say that as a best programming language. Like Kevin said, Java might be quicker. I'm thinking about the support online and what's available, and how a few years ago most schools took on we needed to choose a programming language, and generally people chose Python, which is why it's obviously the most popular today.
Thank you, Paul. And Kevin, this might be for you. This question is, when do we get an A-level IT textbooks or good resources material from AME?
So it's good to hear that. So at the moment, we obviously have international GCSE resources, and we're just publishing resources for Key Stage 1, 2 and 3. I don't want to make any promises around A-level coverage, but we are looking into providing a coherent journey for learners and customers, and we hope to have something to announce at some point this year.
Thank you.
So that's a non-answer, sorry. But seriously, if these are things you want, if you tell us, then you're far more likely to get it. We like to see that demand for it.
And I think this is probably another one for you. When will the books be available for the GCSE curriculum?
So the international GCSE books are available right now.
And then we have another question from Aito. Can we see a sample exam and the curriculum?
Yes, so if you reach out to your local Pearson representative, so whichever part of the world you're in, and let them know, and they can arrange trial materials.
And then another question from Aito. Are the certificates given for Key Stage 1 or 2?
So there's an external examination, which is entirely voluntary in Year 6 at Key Stage 2. And that is certified, so you do get a certificate, and it's delivered by the same team that create the international GCSEs and A-levels as well.
Thank you, Kevin. And then we have more questions in chat. I would like to know how to introduce the topic algorithm at grade 1 to grade 4.
So I'll let Sabiha and Paul take that one.
Okay, so in terms of grades 1, the younger age group, I would say keep it really simple, keep it unplugged, keep it very, very hands-on. Simplest sense, lots of little activities. There's loads of ideas in the workbooks that we are putting out in a couple of months, aren't we? In terms of what's in there, lots of activities for unplugged activities. I would say a little bit of Scratch, maybe Scratch Junior, but I would be tempted to say do it as a non-device activity where you can, okay? So lots of activities in terms of PE in the sports hall, lots of steps for maybe the Olympics also, and children write those down. In Key Stage 3 and 4, I'll leave it to Paul to do.
Thank you, Sabiha. And Kevin, I think we have another question about Inspire Computing primary course. So the question is, does the Inspire Computing primary course require a dedicated or specialist teacher, or can it be delivered by a generalist class teachers?
It can be delivered by generalist class teachers. We know most primary schools won't have specialist computing teachers, so it's designed for the generalist.
And also, are all the teacher and students' materials available now? They're currently out of stock in the Amazon.
So Key Stage 3 resources are being published as we speak. Key Stage 1 and 2 resources will be available from October.
Thank you. And next question is, how do we teach students to visualize the practical part of computing since they don't have computers while sitting for exams? If students are familiar with concepts and commands, they will be able to answer such questions.
Yeah, I mean, computing exams have generally been paper-based, and it's understanding the theory about. So you might not have the pieces of computing in front of you, but you can be asked about what is the role of a CPU, or how is one type of storage device better than another. So yeah, the questions are written around putting that practical experience into theory and being able to talk about it. The hands-on practical side of it is demonstrated in the classroom activities, in the programming projects, and the things you do in the classroom. But yeah, the theory side of it can all be demonstrated on paper.
Thank you, Paul. And there is a question about online subscriptions being extremely difficult to manage in Burundi. And one of the attendees searching for the books. in Kenya, etc. The best thing to do is to contact the local Pearson representative, in case of Kenya is Martin Owiti, and I can share his details in chat afterwards, so you have them at hand.
I just to leave in as well, I did see somebody say that there wasn't a local representative in Turkey, so I think the best person to contact in the first instance there is Amy Fisher. So
Amy Fisher in Turkey, yeah, and Kenya would be Marvin. So lots of questions about requiring more resources. We only have 2 SAMs and students, and our students sit for high primary achievement. We do require more resources. When lesson plans as assessments will be available. And this is probably for you, Kevin.
Okay, so lesson plans and lots of progress tests and end of year tests to help your students are available right now as part of iPrimary and part of iLower Secondary. So if you're interested in accessing those or having access to professional development that's part of iPrimary and iLower Secondary as well and comes as part of the course, please do contact your local Pearson representative and tell them you're interested in IPLS computing.
And also, how deep should I teach coding in year 7?
I'll go for that one. However deep you can do it, basically. It's teaching the basics, but don't be afraid of letting a student run away with it. Because at year 7, that's the time where you will find some students will say, this is interesting, but I don't want to use this forever. Or you'll get some that are saying straight away, this is brilliant. How can I take this further? How can I practice this at home? So you cover the basics, being able to write a basic program that can use inputs, outputs, ask questions, some user input. So the student is responding to the program, answering questions, making choices, something as simple as a magic 8-ball that gives a random answer to a question. That is the sort of level you go in that year 7 into year 8. But definitely don't be afraid of providing those extra resources, as I mentioned earlier, to students who really want to push it at home, because learning the programming language is a whole other skill they can develop themselves as well.
Thank you, Paul. There's a question from Prabha. Are there any upcoming teachers training program? Kevin, I think this is probably for you to answer.
Yes, there are. So again, iPrimary and iLower Secondary are complete curricula covering a whole host of subjects, including computing, and dedicated computing training forms part of that. We can also provide that as a standalone, and again, it's my standard answer. If you let your local Pearson representative know, we can arrange that for you.
Another question from Amy. What is the best class to introduce algorithm and flowcharts?
I mean, I'll probably let Sabiha answer, but I would say algorithmic thinking and algorithms can be introduced in year 1.
Year 1 all the way up to year 6. Flowcharts are usually key stage 3, though. Am I correct with that, Paul?
Yes, but you can still start with simple step-by-step, just simple step, like you said, simple algorithms at key stage 2 as well. The process, I think so, yeah. Just like you say, you take it to real life experiences, take it to song lyrics, to recipes, things that follow step-by-step instructions.
Thank you, Paul. And another question is, how can we inspire the love of computing to learners in iPrimary and iLower Secondary?
I think it's Kevin, that one, I think.
It is Kevin, yes.
Sorry, just dropped out. Can you repeat that, Ilaria? Sorry.
Yes, of course. How can we inspire the love of computing to learners in iPrimary and iLower Secondary?
Well, I'm going to say get your subscription set up for iPrimary and iLower Secondary. There's loads of activities in there, really interesting, practical, hands-on, fun activities. So things that Paul spoke about, experimentation with the BlackBerry Pi and other things, and Sabiha's spoken about really practical aspects at primary level, getting kids really excited there. Those plans are designed to be engaging, interesting, and supportive. the students, but also for teacher, because I think sometimes the lack of excitement in ICT or computing can come from our own fear of the subject. So we've tried to give you as many interesting ways of approaching it as possible.
I think if, and just adding to that, I think looking at the question, it leads into both as well. So lower secondary covers both ICT and computer science. So it allows students to make that choice afterwards.
Thank you. And another question is from Sonia. What will be achievement test paper year 6, May 2022 available? Also the marking scheme.
So the papers, I think it's normally a couple of months. So it's once they've all been marked, it gets released. It's the same as all the other examinations. So probably around August time.
Thank you, Kevin. And another question is, would you give more links or resources for unplugged activities relating to computing?
So I'm sure Sabiha and Paul know lots of good sites and good places to go. For offline unplugged activities, again, I'm going to come back to primary and lower secondary because there's a big host of them there, and also within the Inspire course itself. But outside of that, I think Google is your friend, but be judicious because there is variable quality out there.
Thank you. And hello, will students continue with IGCSE, ICT or computer science after lower secondary curriculum?
Yes. I think Paul mentioned earlier that the computing curriculum gets you to the place where by the end of year 9, you can choose to do ICT or computer science, or both if you fancy it.
Thank you, Kevin. Some of the questions are about resources. When do we get ebooks and when the resources will be available in Qatar?
So print books will be available from October. Ebook versions should be available at the start of September, and the teacher planning and worksheets and progress tests are available right now online. In terms of arrival in Qatar, again, I would ask your local representative, who I think is Amy Fisher, because she'll have a better overview of shipping times.
And another question is about, can you provide some workshops on actual teaching in computing?
Yes, absolutely. So there is the professional development that comes as part of the course, but we're arranging extra professional development all the time. So again, that's good to hear. And there's lots of webinars and online workshops and things like this that we can run throughout the year. So I'll pass that along to our professional development team, and I'm sure there'll be a demand for computing workshops.
Thank you, Kevin. And there is another question for you. Is there a fee for the exams for Edexcel accredited schools?
Yes, so there is a per pupil fee for the external achievement tests, but they are entirely voluntary and there's no maximum or minimum number of pupils. And details of the fee, I don't know if they're published actually, because I don't have to enter pupils. But again, if you ask your regional representative, they'll be able to tell you the details, but you enter through the Edexcel online portal, just like you would for IG or IAL.
Thank you. And I think this concludes our, actually doesn't. There's another question. Could you also give us depth of topic? Lesson plans and specifications doesn't give details of it. How does a teacher proceed with lesson plans, having said books is available by September? Kevin, I think this is probably for you again.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure I fully understand the question. I'm really sorry. Could you elaborate, please?
I'll move on to the next question while we wait. for how long after registering we can have workshops?
So I don't want to make any definite promises here, because obviously we do have a really good professional development team, but it does depend on people's availability. But we certainly hope, if you're an I-primary or I-low secondary school, you will get your training within the first month or so of registering. And then for extra workshops, we're running those all the way through the year. So every few months there'll be a workshop, but it might not always be on computing. So it's a case of checking your newsletter, letting us know what you'd like to see, and watching this space.
And then in conjunction with the question above, say it is network. How much do we go and teach about networks? Lesson plan doesn't give much details. So.
Okay. Sorry, Paul. Yeah, go for it.
I say networks are key stage 3 is go as far as the things that your students are using. So the classroom. So you're going as far as network computers, routers, things that you have in your home, switches. That's probably as much into key stage 3. That's probably as much detail as you need to do. The things that students will have experienced it. And the good thing is, as I said earlier, most people will have set up a wireless network at home, so will have already know what those devices are. So yeah, that's probably as much detail as you need to go about networks.
If I could just add there as well, with the student books and the workbooks, it takes the students on a learning journey. So it's a set of 10 lessons or so for that unit. So if it's about networks, it's taking that journey for the students anyway. So you will be covering that step by step all the way to the end. And the depth depends on the topic itself, again, and the age group specific level as well. So with these books, you are able to take them on that journey, okay, to understanding networks or animation or whatever it is that you're covering that term.
Thank you very much, Sabiha. And I think we're done with the questions. So there's somebody that says, I agree, but our journey will start only September. Then we will stick on with lesson plans. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for answering all the questions, and thank you for listening. So I think this concludes today's session. So thank you very, very much to Sabiha and Paul for a very interesting session. And just a quick summary for everyone. So only a little reminder, recording of these webinars will be available very soon. They will be available tomorrow. I'll make sure that the link to them gets shared with you all and you can access it and obviously watch it again at your own convenience. So we hope you found this presentation informative. Thank you very much again for attending. Have a great rest of the day and stay safe. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.